we'll see. He's a man of many hats. He usually has one on. He's got one on in this picture I got right here. He is, in addition to Hyde Park Town historian, a land surveyor since 1975. He's written 6 books about Hyde Park, the Roosevelts in the Hudson Valley, Colonel Archibald Rogers in the Cromwell Estate, the home front at Roosevelt's hometown, hidden history of the Mid-Hudson Valley, hidden history of the Lower Hudson Valley, the history of Hyde Park, and the Gilded Age at Hyde Park, which was co-authored with Shannon Butler, who both succeeded and preceded you, I guess, as Hyde Park Town historian. So there's an unusual format, which I think you're going to enjoy. So it has a bit of audience participation. And I'm going to leave it to Carney to explain that part. I will say that if you do participate and use the microphone, please wait for the microphone to get to you before you start speaking. Because I get a lot of times at these events, people are saying, I'm loud enough, everybody can hear me, and I can promise you they can't. This room's hard. So I'm going to turn it over to Carney, and welcome and enjoy.
Does my voice carry as much as Cliff's did? We have such a good crowd here, I think we ought to say a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I had a complete speech prepared, but Cliff stole everything I was going to say. But we'll try to work through it, all right? The idea of having audience participation, most authors would do that at the end of their program, but during the program, we're going to have as many as 50 slides, and if there's something you want to say about a slide or question, raise your hand like we used to do in school. And we've got Amanda Kane here with a microphone, and Roger Culp over there with a microphone. So wait for the microphone, and we'll everything will work out, I'm sure. So, this, like Cliff said, this is not in print anymore, and it's also not copyrighted. That's how we were able to put all these slides up on the board. It's a very unusual presentation because most authors will come in and talk about their book, but we're talking about somebody else's book. And I want to mention a few things about Olin Dowse. He was a friend of Franklin Roosevelt when they were young men, and he decided to go into World War II. There were 4 artists, only 4 in the whole country, that participated in World War II on the front lines. There were a lot of artists during the Civil War that made drawings. You'll see it in Frank Leslie's weekly, and but he was one of only 4, and he actually turned out to be a war hero. When he was in Germany, he could speak perfect German language, and he convinced 60 German soldiers to surrender. This is Olin Dowse, the author of this book. So, I gotta find the right button. I hope a disco light doesn't come by. you came in, you probably walked right over top of the mosaic. The mosaic came out of, well, the original mosaic was in the second page of this book. And at the time that mosaic was built, it was still under copyright, so they had to go to the Dow's family to make sure that they could put that mosaic where it is. This is Olin Dow's. I think he died in 1971. Amanda, if I say something wrong, you let me know, Harvey.
Sure.
All right. This is the St. James Chapel where he was baptized. Franklin Roosevelt was born in 1882 and baptized here. Actually, his mother wanted him baptized at the church, which is up the road on the right-hand side before you get to Statsburg, and right across from the Vanderbilt property. But at the time, they didn't have any heat in the regular church, but the chapel had a wood fireplace, and so they heated that. He was born in January 30th. His birthday's coming up in a few days. So his mother took him to the chapel, and this little chapel, she invited all the rich people she could find with very important names, the Vanderbilts, the Rogers, other people. So this is Franklin and his baptismal gown. And when I first saw that, I thought, well, do mothers still put their boys in sissy dresses like that for baptism? And I only thought it for a few moments because I saw this painting. This painting was done by my wife, Tatiana Reinwald, and that's my son. He's 25 now, but that's him. And I'd like my wife to stand up. She said she would this time. This is Tatiana. So I was wrong about the sissy baptismal gown. Here, Franklin, when he's very young, he had a horse or a pony named Polly, and he lived the life of a prince. His parents doted on him, and I couldn't tell you who the dog is. Maybe somebody knows. No? I heard somebody mutter something. No? Okay, this is, I can't tell you the name of the ship. If you have a copy of the book, maybe you can look it up. But this is before Franklin was born and before his parents were married. His mother, Sarah, lived for about a year in China. Her father was a China trade dealer, and some of it was opium. This is Cromwell Hall. We have about 5 slides of Franklin at Cromwell Hall. Cromwell Hall burned this January 1st this year, 2 weeks ago. And this is where he had come in the winter for dance lessons inside the Cromwell Hall. I have a photograph of my wife and son sitting on those steps. But any of these slides of Cromwell Hall, you're welcome to raise your hand and we'll talk about this horrible, horrible fire 3 weeks ago. Here, Franklin's father, and young Franklin, in the blizzard of 1888, they snowshoed up to Cromwell Hall in the background. That's where he went to school until he was 14. At 14, he went to Groton Academy in Connecticut, I think. Yes. And this is his beloved Hudson River. Probably the buildings and the dock and everything are gone now, but he spent all of his time either on the river or climbing trees, one or the other. This house in the background is what people recently have called the Red House. It was white to start out with. It was red for a long time, so it was the Red House, and now it's white again. It's owned by the National Park Service. It's in that direction. It was his half-brother. Franklin's father was like 53 when he married Sarah, and I think Sarah was either in her late teens or early 20s. And so he already had a family, but he had lost his wife. His wife died. And Rosie Roosevelt was half-brother to Franklin Roosevelt. So Rosie lived in that house there. It's still there, and I think the National Park Service, if they can get their budgets approved and everything, they're going to try to restore it. This is when you pulled into the parking lot, on the far side of the parking lot, this was the home for the superintendent of Sarah Roosevelt's property. Sarah Roosevelt died in 1941, but up until that point, people would ask President Roosevelt about his farm on the Hudson River, and he would always say, "It's not my farm, it's my mother's farm." And so that they were the superintendents for his mother's farm. Everything on this side of the road and some of that where Red Barn Road is across the road, that was her property. And eventually, Franklin started buying up property and property and property. I think he had about 1,100 acres at one time. Here he is climbing trees, and his mother occasionally would ask, "How come you're yelling at everybody, giving so many orders?" And Franklin would say, "Well, if I didn't give the orders, nothing would get done." And it might be that's how he ran the presidency, I don't know. This building is still here. You can visit it when you take a tour of the Franklin Roosevelt property. It's the stables. You go in there, there's a little button you can push, and you hear Eleanor's squeaky voice telling, about this and that. Here is the Springwood where Franklin grew up, and to the right is the Red House. And it's not open like that anymore. A little bit of the south lawn, you can see the river, but it's all grown over now. this pond was actually on Cromwell property, but because the Rogers family and the Roosevelt families were so good friends that they treated each other's property like it was, you know, common property. And I think they're cutting ice here. Of course, some of you can remember your parents referring to your refrigerator as the ice box. I sure can remember. And before electricity kept it going. Here's Franklin with a very, very unusual hobby. He liked to taxidermy. He liked to stuff dead birds. So much so that his uncle gave him a lifetime membership in the American Museum of Natural History. But his mother told him that he could shoot 2 of each species, one male and one female. But I don't know.
Right, 1 second. You got a question?
Have a question over here.
Hi, thanks. I wanted to know about the illustrations that we're looking at. Are these by Olin Cows?
Yes.
Because I know when I got excited about dubbing, it was because I had been to the post office a number of times and just loved those illustrations of the history of the area. And I didn't know if indeed, and you probably already told us, and I apologize if you did already, that these were indeed Olin Downs illustrations.
All right. Here's a perfect example of Olin Dow's. He was a historian also. All right. So this is those 2 pillars are still on Route 9. That cedar hedge on the right there, you can still make it out. It's a little bigger now than it used to be. We can talk about this one for quite a while. In the background is Belfield, which is the headquarters of the National Park Service in this area. And when Dow's did this drawing, he did it from his own research and his own thought process, because at the time that he drew this in 1949, Belfield didn't look like that. It has a, oh, what did I do? Oh no. Cliff, can you take us back to that Belfield? I leaned on the buttons. Cliff, while he's in the projection.
I'm here, I'm just having a little trouble with the remote in the back there. There you go.
All right. One more, right there.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. So, when he drew this in 1949, he did some research and he found out that this is what Belfield used to look like. Now it has an addition on this side, and it did have an addition when he drew it in 1949. But he said, well, it didn't look like that when Franklin Roosevelt was 12 years old. Here they are coming out onto Route 9 with no hands on handlebars. That's just an indication
Move back to the mic, Carney.
there wasn't here. there wasn't near as much traffic on Route 9 as there is now. I have seen kids riding their bikes right down the center line now, and it's dangerous, real dangerous. The woman is, the girl is Mary Newbold, who married a man named Gerald Butler from Stassburg. And their son, Gerald Butler Jr., I got it right?
Morgan.
Morgan. Why'd you say Morgan? Say, good thing I got help. Morgan Jr., he actually communicated with me when he was in his 90s. So I have just some connection with some of these. And Gerald Morgan Jr. Gave Belfield and some property to the north to the National Park Service. Anybody else have anything to say about this one? This is, the building in the back is the, where the Hyde Park School was. They had one school for, I think, grades 5 through 8 or something. But if you'll notice that, this is where the Getty gas station used to be, right near Sweet's funeral home. It's a vacant lot now, parking lot. I guess Robert Sweet uses it for his funerals sometimes, and cars park in there. But that's where this building was. And Franklin used to tell people about how he would hold the horse for his father, who was on the school board. And I think I'm channeling James Roosevelt. I have a bowler hat, I have the mutton chops. I don't know how I came up with that, but that's what it is. Actually, my wife designed my face. But that's a very, at one time Franklin told about this very scene here when he was preaching at the Methodist church here. And he was asked, it was, I think it was their 50th anniversary or the 100th anniversary. And they had invited some big bishop from New York City to come up and participate in the ceremonies, but the bishop got sick. So somebody knew Franklin when he was older, of course, when he was president, and invited him to give a sermon. And he talked about this, how he would hold the horse for his father while his father was at the Board of Education. And Franklin tried to get up on stage on his own, and it was one of the few times where he tried to get somewhere on his own. He always had his son James, or some other Secret Service person helping him, but he got almost up to the podium and he fell flat on his face, and everybody in the audience went, oh. And the only thing that was hurt was his pride. And it was good for everybody that he was president at the time. So the place was packed with people. This again is Cromwell. Cromwell is the building that burned. I was told by Greg Elderkin, he was deputy fire chief of Hyde Park Fire Department, that this room did not burn, but the roof is pretty much gone. There are parts of Cromwell that, all right, so the people in the drawing, one is Franklin, probably standing there. The two boys are Ashton boys. The pastor of the St. James Church, even though he wasn't rich, all the rich people wanted to get in good with the pastor. So they allowed the two boys of the Ashton family to participate in the school. And I guess maybe Mary Newbold is one of them with her hair back. And what the school was they'd have tutors come in. They weren't teachers like we had in school where they'd teach all subjects. They'd have tutors come in, a French tutor, a German tutor. And we have a question.
Just an observation, not a question. In 2010, I was involved in taking the census, and me and another person, and early on, they had us doing what they call a group census, where you went to facilities or whatever. And one of the ones we went to was Cromwell. We approached it, it had a big fenced-in area. We had to ring a bell or something to get in. But once we got in, one of the, I guess it's a religious organization that owns it now, the sister or whatever, took us around and gave us a whole little tour of the building, explained how Franklin and Roger's son were educated there. She also mentioned that during World War II, there was military people who were actually physically there. In fact, she said there were still remnants of some old military equipment on the property because of it being close to Franklin's home. So it was very interesting. It has a lot of history, that building.
Another question over here.
What did the fire chief tell you about the future of that? Is it going to be raised, or is there any part that's salvageable?
I couldn't hear.
What's the future of the building? Do we know what the future is?
All right, well, I didn't know we'd go this far with our discussion, but we have had one person suggest that we talk to Scenic Hudson, because Greg told me that the people that were living there, is there anyone here of the 11 people that were living there? All right, Greg told me that they had no fire insurance. So they're not going to be able to do a thing with that building. But Scenic Hudson sure could. They're as rich as Rockefeller, really. When Scenic Hudson started out, they started out with a $50 million grant from the Wallace family that ran the Reader's Digest down in Chappaqua. So I was hoping that, are there any firemen here that were at the fire? I see someone pointing back there. Could you say a couple words for us? That microphone.
Hi, everybody. I'm actually Roseville Fire Department, so we help the Hyde Park and everybody else. But the whole back of the building collapsed, and a lot of the internal structure was all burned. I was inside, and everything was just burned pretty badly. So I don't know if they can salvage it because the walls aren't stable. I mean, the whole front of the building still looks like it's there. I mean, I have pictures of it, but I'm not a structural engineer, so I can't really speak for if we can save it or not. But it's a shame if we don't, because it's a beautiful building.
My wife and I were 23 years ago, when my son was 2 years old, that they gave us a very nice tour of the building, and It was just amazing woodwork on the walls. It was, I don't know how to explain it. It just, you couldn't believe that only 11 people were living in there. It was built for a lot more than that. Here's that same pond where they were cutting ice. Here they're skating. It's also where Franklin Roosevelt learned how to swim. Ice yachts on the Hudson River. I believe that Franklin's ice yacht was the Hawk. Is that right? Hawk. Here's the third floor of Cromwell with Franklin playing Santa Claus. Those candles on the tree, they were real candles. I was told by Gerald Morgan Jr. that the butler for the Rogers had 2 or 3 buckets of water right standing by, so if those candles set the tree on fire, that he would throw on the tree. But apparently there wasn't anything terrible happened that's in recorded history anyway. Maybe something did happen. But Franklin Roosevelt as Santa Claus. Here's St. James Church. A little out of order from the speech that I was telling you. I don't believe it's quite that tall now. There was a fire a few years ago that the John Golden family and others contributed and helped rebuild St. James Church. Maybe some of you contributed money to. I don't see anybody raising their hand. Okay, so golf. Both the Roosevelts and the Rogers had golf links out in their front yard between their houses and Route 9. This is the racetrack in East Park where the cemetery is now, the East Park Cemetery. At one time, they had a sulky racetrack there. We have other pictures of that. We know that this depicts it pretty much. We have photographs of it, is what I'm saying. This is, I think it was a meeting of the Dutchess County Historical Society. Franklin Roosevelt was one of the founding members, and he invited people to his estate for one of their summer picnics. And of course, everybody came. I think he was president at the time. Here he is trying to walk from this row of maple trees is still there, from the house out to Route 9. And he tried to, some doctors told him to exercise all he could. He would try to make it out to Route 9, and apparently he never made it. And other doctors would say that he was ruining his body by trying to exercise so hard. But he did have a very strong upper body. Here we are at the pond again, and some fellow was trying to teach another guy how to swim, and that's how they would teach kids back then. I guess that's at least how the Rogers and the Roosevelt family did. They'd tie a rope on them and fish with them, I guess. Can you imagine that? That's supposedly how Franklin learned how to swim. This is over on Route 9G. It's a building that doesn't exist anymore. It's right opposite where Valkill Drive and Route 9G intersect. If you go towards the parking lot or the back part of the farm lane, that's where this house was. And it was the house of Moses Smith. Moses was quite a character. He rented land from Franklin Roosevelt, and when he first met Franklin Roosevelt, they became great friends. But Moses came into the house and said to his wife that there's some blankety blank, I'm not going to say what he said, but out scaring our cows. He was going to go out and give them a piece of his mind. Well, they went out and found out it was the new landlord, Franklin Roosevelt. And ever since that time, they were great friends. Mrs. Smith taught Eleanor how to make donuts, that kind of thing. It was a great family friendship that they had. And when Franklin became president, Moses Smith was the person that started the Roosevelt Home Club. And they would have every summer to start out a political campaign, they would have speeches on that front porch. And we have photographs of Eleanor holding one of the grandchildren and Franklin giving a speech. It's just, but it's gone. It's not there anymore. This is Valkill, a little cottage near the bridge, and the Valkill furniture factory in the back, on the left. This is my neighbor. I live at 6 Main Street, and this is number 2 Main Street. And this is the library that they built for, in honor of James Roosevelt. It's the James Roosevelt Memorial Library. And I don't know if they call it that anymore, or if it's the Hyde Park Free Library, but it's a great library. They have a good book collection in there. And one thing that did happen, though, is Eleanor Roosevelt, once when they were visiting Iran, she was with Franklin Roosevelt while he was president. The Iranian government gave a couple dolls with full costumes on to Eleanor and Franklin. And when they came back to America, they realized that the presidents aren't allowed to take personal gifts. But that was back then. I don't know what I can say about today. So what happened then is she gave the 2 dolls to the library. And I have spent years monkeying through that library to see if I can find those dolls, but I think somebody else walked off with them. Here we are back at the south lawn of Springwood. You can still visit there and see way down the river. And here's the milepost out in front of the Roosevelt property. I helped Carl Greco repair that once. And then it got hit by cars 2 more times. And Carl Greco fixed it a total of 3 times. But after one time, I had enough. I don't know how he did it. How old do you think Carl is now? In his late 80s, maybe? Yeah. So he's given up on fixing the mileposts. But he and Frank Greco fixed 4 of them, repaired 4 of them. One up at Norrie Point, one up in Rhinebeck, this one, and one down at the top of Teller Hill. A great guy, Carl Greco. Here, Franklin is, these are all not from photographs. This is what old Dow's was thinking. But if you go into the Springwood, you can see where the bed is, and there is a balcony kind of from the window. And during World War II, there was a canvas chute that they had rolled down from the top down to the ground level. And during an air raid, we did it once that I had heard of, where they would take the president and put him at the top of the chute and slide him down this canvas chute to the bottom level. And then they'd carry him over to a slit trench, which you can see that too, a World War I style slit trench. It's, I would say about 100 feet southeast of the mansion itself. And then after that, they would take him to some other town. The Secret Service was afraid that the Nazis were going to bomb Hyde Park and Poughkeepsie and capture President Roosevelt. There's something in, and I've asked all the people at the Park Service, where is that slit trench? I found it, but nobody had ever heard that story before. This is the town hall, which is across the street from where the library is, also across the street from my house. My house is the original home of Archibald Rogers, who owned Cromwell. Well, I live at number 6 Main Street, and he built this as a community hall, kind of as a men's club, and he decided to give it to the town in 1905 or 1906 as the town hall. And that burned down in the 1960s. And now we have kind of a hodgepodge of different design. And inside the town hall, that's Franklin voting. We have in our museum, in the old fire station, we have the voting booth that Franklin Roosevelt used. And and maybe nowhere else in the whole country, there's a slip of paper where you can either vote for Franklin or vote for Herbert Hoover. And we've been told that that's very, very valuable, and we're very careful with that voting booth, and especially the paper inside the voting booth. And you can see the letter up above the voting booth where Franklin, his last time he voted at that town hall, he was having trouble with the handle. He used to pull the curtain behind him so nobody could see who he voted for. And he said he knew the guy that repaired that voting booth stuff. And he said, let's call him Joe. Joe, this thing isn't working right. And some Republican reporter reported in the paper, I don't know, New York paper, and then it got all over the country, that he said, Joe, this goddamn thing isn't working right. And it became a national scandal. So a week later, the same papers would send a group of people to the town hall to find out what's wrong. Did he say that or not? They couldn't find anybody. They tried to find everybody that was in the building at the time Roosevelt was there. Even the Republicans said, no, he never said that. But can you imagine the scandals that we would have now? This was peanuts. This is down by the river, where you take the road from the mansion down to the river, and it'd be over here on the left, and there is an inlet, and to the right of that inlet is where the railroad track siding that would bring Roosevelt, if he came up from the south, they would sweep him in there. But they usually dropped him off. He traveled by train, not by airplane. He traveled 200 times while he was president to Hyde Park. It's the place where he thought he could get the most rest. And that is our post office. It looks just about the same. And there was a hardware store there and a barber shop there. We have pictures of it on those calendars that we sell every year. There's Franklin and Archibald Rogers cutting trees. Also, at the bottom, is that the Delameter Pond, or Roger, can you help me with that? Oh, you can't help me. All right. And Roosevelt did sell some lumber to build wood landing craft. These ships that came up on D-Day and Normandy, they were made out of wood. And this wood that came off from Roosevelt's property wound up in Kingston, and from Kingston they made ships, landing craft. This is Top Cottage, the famous hot dog picnic. The King and Queen of England would be on the porch, but about half the people were government people, either English or American, and the other half were just friends of Roosevelt, employees of their estate, that kind of thing. It was very ecumenical, I guess you could call it. And here we are at his gravesite. He actually gave specifications for the headstone in his will. He wanted it 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet, and he wanted to be buried next to his dear wife when she passed. That's it. No other questions? How about if we want to discuss?
Just a quick question, thank you.
Yes.
When the King and Queen came to Hyde Park, I assume they stayed at the mansion, not at Top Cottage, right? When they visited
the king and queen came up on Saturday evening, and they did stay at Springwood. And they spent the night at Springwood, and that night, or maybe it was the next supper, they had some interesting things go on at supper time. There were 3 times that Roosevelt brought a butler from a table server or butler from the White House. And Sarah was really annoyed, but the butler tripped 3 times with glasses, champagne glasses. And so that was, she still had a crowning moment, Sarah did. And then the next day, Sunday, the first thing they did, they went to St. James Church service with a big crowd of people. And one of the ushers was a guy named Rube DeGroff. Some of you might have heard of him, but he was a baseball player. But he was one of the ushers that collected the money, and he passed the plate to the King of England for a contribution. And all the newspapers wanted to know how much money that King of England contributed to St. James Church. It's an Anglican church. It was his style church. And here I did something again. There. And so he told the people at the newspapers that it was American money. That's all he would say. He took the secret to his grave. So then they went to the hot dog package after that, up at Top Cottage. And there were we got some pictures of kids looking over the porch. I don't know if I can try to pick it up. Like right here. There would be some kids right here with their hands up on the porch. We have those on some of our calendars too. After that, they went swimming at Valkill in the old pond, or the old swimming pool that was there. And Franklin Roosevelt tried to get up out of the water. He was, I don't know if he was showing off or what, but he was swimming. He had his back to the edge of the pool, right? He was trying to lift himself up. He had very strong arms. He was trying to lift himself up. And about 5 times, finally at the 5th time, he flies out of the pool and lands right on a tray with champagne glasses. Nobody was hurt. And he says to the King of England, he says, "Why didn't you tell me about the pool, about the tray?" And then he thought, that wasn't very good for me. So everybody starts laughing. The king starts laughing. Everybody starts laughing. Can you imagine? Then they went that evening. I guess they might have gone to Sarah's house for supper. That evening they went down to the train station, and the king and queen were headed for Canada. And I can remember John Golden telling me that it was crowded on the Vanderbilt stone wall, all the way down West Market Street, down to the train station, with kids, and everybody was having a great time. And I guess it was kind of late at night, but they was in the summer, so maybe they didn't have school the next day. But they get down to the train station, and there's Secret Service guys all over the place. But they were using the men's room at the train station. And one guy who wasn't Secret Service went in and found a gun that one of the Secret Service guys had put his gun down so he could use the bathroom. He set it on a shelf, and the next guy to go in finds the gun. And he comes walking out into the main lobby of the train station, says, "Whose gun is this?" Of course, everybody jumps on him. And it's just insane. Patsy Costello told me that story, and she says it's the guys on the street. So they had quite a lot of adventures. Just a day and a half they were here. When they came here, they came on a Saturday evening. They came through Poughkeepsie, and the bells were ringing, and there were people lining the road all the way from Poughkeepsie to Hyde Park, just shoulder to shoulder. They came from all over. They estimated 20,000 people. I got a question in the back. Roger, you got it.
Can you explain, Carney, the sequence of ownership from when Rogers owned it until present? I know at one point the town could have bought it. I think there was a referendum, but can you explain that?
Okay, the history of Cromwell. You all know where Cromwell is, right? It's the next man. You don't know. It's the next mansion north of this mansion. And it's where Franklin went to school. I showed that picture. They had snowshoes going. Well, first it was owned by Archibald Rogers' family, very rich family. In 1889, they moved here. They were there until Mrs. Rogers died in the early 1930s. And went up for sale, and finally a man purchased Cromwell, and he used it as a school for Jewish boys in New York City. And they were only there a couple years, and at one of the graduations that they had, there was a woman named Faye Emerson. If you've ever heard that name, she was wife of Elliott Roosevelt, and she was on television a lot. Faye Emerson. She was the graduation speaker. After that, it was sold to John Golden's family. Most of you know who John Golden was, I hope. He was a contractor, and they built houses. I think I heard this many. It's 500 houses on Cromwell property, and they sold it to Amard Religious Academy, and that's when a lot of people still here today can remember taking swimming lessons in the Amard pool, which used to be the Rogers pool, and they had fireworks every 4th of July. It was like a community center, and about the time that Amard rented this up, that's when the town could have purchased it. But there was enough Republican opposition to it that it didn't get done. The same way we don't have any sewer pipes in Hyde Park because there was opposition to it. And so then this Millennial Kingdom Family Church wound up buying it instead of the town. And they're the ones that allowed the fire to. They were there when the fire started. They don't know what they had to do to start it. I heard from Greg Anderkin that it was a space heater in a room where they were trying to keep a cat warm. And the whole place burned. And we think that it's still recoverable, parts of it anyway. It'll never go back to its original glory, but we hope that it could be recovered somewhat. And Gary, the guy standing back in the door, he suggested that we talk to St. Cousin about it. Anything else? Well, 5 minutes longer than an hour or so.